Something was always missing. Deep down, Irina knew she was being unreasonable. She would eventually have to marry someone. Her coming out in St. Petersburg the year before had resulted in 12 rejected proposals, and by the end of this season in Paris, she knew that some of the monikers she'd received during her first would return to torment her. Ice Princess, Stone Heart, and her favourite, Cold Fish. She jutted her chin as the music began. No matter, she could weather this season as well. By the end of the set, her heart was racing and her earlier thoughts had vanished. She thanked Lord de Roche for the dance and, rejecting his wicked invitation for a fourth, retired to the ladies' salon. While she'd enjoyed the innuendo and his attentions, Irina did not want to play games with someone as dissolute as de Roche. She'd likely end up with her skirts over her head and her already spare reputation in tatters. And as much as she claimed not to care for the precious thoughts of the beau monde, Irina still had her sister's position to consider, if not her own. Lana was now a respected viscountess in English society, and from the tone of her last letter, she was not pleased with reports of Irina's latest vagaries. A trio of pastel-wrapped debutantes twittered as she walked past them toward a pair of empty armchairs. Irina paid them no mind as she sat. Her recent behavior was scandalous, she knew, and despite her social standing, associating with her would be viewed as foolish. As a result, she was surprised when she was joined by a red-cheeked lady drowning in layers of aquamarine tulle. The woman fanned herself vigorously and smoothed tendrils of fiery red hair that had escaped the jewelled combs at her temples. "I loathe the quadrille," she announced with dramatic flair as she signalled for a glass of champagne from a nearby footman. "It does absolutely nothing for my complexion." Irina recognized her as Lady Lion, an English countess close to her own age who had only recently married. No English rose, Lady Lion was known more for her bawdy humour than her beauty, and though their paths had crossed before, they had never exchanged more than a few words. Irina smiled and nodded her head in greeting. "Lady Lion." "Please," she said with an exaggerated eye-roll before draining the contents of her flute. "No more titles. Countess this, Lady that. Call me Gwen, and I shall call you Irina." Irina suppressed another smile. It was clear that the Countess was shockingly into her cups, which would explain why she had voluntarily sat in the first place. And the use of given names after what could hardly be called an introduction was unheard of. Such a breach of stuffy etiquette suited Irina immensely. "Lady Lion, Gwen, are you well?" The Countess's pale blue eyes swung to hers. "Why wouldn't I be?" She waved her glass and added, "Oh, you mean this? Not to worry, my mother was Irish." As if that explained everything. At that moment, Irina realized she had found an unlikely kindred spirit. "So?" Gwen asked, leaning forward in a conspiratorial fashion. "De Roche, eh? I hear he's made of gold, everywhere it counts. Good catch." Irina laughed to herself at her suggestive wink. 3 dances had indeed been enough to insinuate an interest in marriage. "I hate to disappoint, but no. Lord de Roche is a passing entertainment, nothing more." Gwen stared at her circumspectly, something like interest dawning in her eyes. "Are you ever in London?" "I haven't been as of late, but my sister does live there, as well as in Essex." "Ah, yes, Lady Northridge, lovely woman." She grinned. "I used to fancy your brother-in-law. Thankfully, North did not return my affections, otherwise he would have been ruined for any other woman." A reformed rake, Irina knew her brother-in-law had had an active past. He'd conceived a child with one of his mistresses, and a few years later had fallen in love with Irina's sister, who had taken the child in as her own. Though she missed Lana and had seen her in St. Petersburg months before, Irina hadn't set foot in England since she'd left 4 years ago. Her throat tightened painfully. There was a reason for it, one she refused to entertain at the moment. She drew a calming breath. Gwen stood, her cheeks still violently flushed. "Well, I suppose I should go find..."